Now coming to our session for today, and our session has, I'm sure that's what the reason why you're here is Peter Yorke, and what we're trying to discuss, or what we want to discuss today, is his experiences with AI. And AI is a very hot field at the moment, and everybody is talking about generative AI. Everybody wants to be to understand what this generative AI is about. So Peter has about three decades of experience, and a little more than 3 decades of experience. That may indicate his age, but don't calculate his age. And I'm joking about that. So anyway, so he is currently the marketing and communications lead and senior vice president at Suntech Business Solutions. They are a niche financial services product company. And before that, he ran his own content marketing and content agency called Yorke Communications for well over a decade, and they had about at one time 185 plus customers, and they're one of the largest content marketing agencies in the country, and very well respected and well known. And anybody who has in the last 5 years worked in content or been in this space would have heard of Yorke Communications. And he has tremendous experience in the content space. One of the stalwarts and one of the people who has set up some of the standards on technical writing and technical services content creation, and been in the space for a very long time. So that is about Peter. Now I'll hand it over to Peter to share and start telling us about his experiences in the AI space. So Peter, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Ruben, and good morning, everyone. Great to be here this morning, and appreciate your time as well. It's a Saturday, so there are a lot of other things we could be doing this morning. So happy that you're part of this session today. I thought I'll just spend a few minutes, and I'm not going to present anything or put up any slides. I thought it would be great to just make it a more informal kind of a discussion. So I thought I'll start essentially by just maybe making a couple of points, and then we can go into a Q&A. And I know Ruben has a few questions, and then I invite everybody to kind of, join in, and then we can all speak and maybe make it a discussion. Because one of the first things about AI, especially in the context of writing, is that it's a fast emerging field. I mean, almost every other day there are new things that are emerging in the market. So I don't really expect this session to be all encompassing, definitive. If we do the same session 2 months later, maybe we'll have another 5 things to discuss. So that's pretty much where it stands at this point. Now, the big question that everybody had, and I was in a technical writing forum about a month and a half, 2 months back, and the question that came up was, am I going to be redundant as a writer? Okay, and I think the first thing, just to set the stage and to kind of contextualize this, we can't wish away AI. Okay, so AI is going to be there. There are some of the I think it's got the most number of companies that are kind of building solutions around this for various applications across various industries and across various domains. So we can't wish away that, and therefore the rest. I mean, the best thing for us to do is to really adopt and to see how it can kind of impact us in our day-to-day routine, and not about how it impacts us, but rather I would say how we can leverage AI to make our lives better and easier and all the rest of it. I was attending a Gartner webinar a little while ago, and they are very clear. By 2025, 30% of outbound marketing messages are going to be from large organizations, will be generated synthetically. Okay, 30% of outbound marketing messages are going to be generated synthetically. This is not just text-based generation; it could be visual-based, video-based. It could be anything that kind of that is put out as part of marketing campaigns or social media campaigns or anything that is put out into public domain. So the basic point is that when you start your journey in AI, okay, some of you may have already started it, but if you are going to invest in this journey in AI, start with your context. Okay, so look at where you are. What are some of the things you do as part of your day-to-day routine, and what you do as part of your work profile, and start there. Treat the tool as an assistant. In fact, in my 30 plus years of career, what I've seen is that we've had different forms and different avatars of um people who have basically been assistants to what we do. I remember the good old days, we had traditional, office secretaries who used to work for us. Then that became a virtual role. There was some person in Philippines who was kind of helping you to kind of get things done, appointment setting, doing whatever, managing the calendar and doing all the rest of it. Then it became completely digitized, and your alerts and reminders, and you had Alexa that came along and helped you find data and do everything. This is one more form of that. It's basically one more evolution. So treat the AI tool that you're going to use as an assistant to make your work better, more productive. Make it something that is going to be more meaningful in terms of what you do. Now, AI can be used to generate content in a variety of ways. Okay. One is you could process large amounts of text data, you could identify trends, you could use that to generate new content. And I will run through some use cases as we kind of go along. And I know that, we'll be talking a little bit about it. It's also kind of something that you can actually create. Uh, you can actually create writing like you write, human writing. Okay, and it can be used to generate new content. It may be used to be an idea starter for you. So you may want to kind of start out with help using the tool to help you kind of generate ideas, to generate content that you can review. So rather than you sitting and agonizing over writing something, or if you have writer's block and you don't know where to start, this may be a good place to kind of begin the conversation or start something out. So look at it in that context. Look at it as an assistant or something that can basically help you be more productive in what you do. And that's the kind of basic premise with which I started out. And today I'm kind of enjoying the journey that it's taking me on, and it's becoming very very kind of meaningful in what I do. This is a kind of a broad overview. And as I said, today's session is not definitive. It's a fast evolving field. There is enough of material out there. And as I said, if we do this session another 3 months later, we will have different other things to talk about, and it will be uh, growing on us as we kind of go through our journey. So I'll hand it back to Ruben. Basically, I know he has a few
Yeah.
questions, and maybe you want to just
Yeah, so
start off and kick off. Yeah.
yes, thanks, Peter. So just to let everybody know that this is meant to be an interactive session. So if you have any questions, you can just unmute and ask them. I know we are just early into this discussion, but it's meant to be a discussion. It's meant to be a Q&A. So please unmute and ask whenever you have a question. So firstly, I mean, I think one of the considerations that everybody, like you spoke about, will it take my job, and what do I do to adapt to bring it? But the question then arises is, see, I've never had an assistant, so how do I learn to prompt that assistant? How do I ask? What kind of prompts do I ask this assistant? So where do I start from there? Considering that I've never had an assistant, now what do I do?
So it all starts, Ruben, from basically where you want to go. Okay. So it's like, just imagine tomorrow you want to go on a holiday. Okay. So what are the considerations you take for the holiday? You say, okay, look, I don't want to travel too far. The air journey should not be more than 4 hours. It should be a nice place, which is the beach, because that's the kind of thing I enjoy. I have a young son, so I have to take into account, his travel needs. Or I have old parents that I need to take into account. Whatever, you put your parameters together, and basically then you do your searching, and that helps you define where you can go. And there is enough of material out there which will tell you 20 places to vacation in 2023, and 20 places which are close by, and 20 best beach resorts, and whatever else it is. This journey is similar to that. All you do is you define where you want to go and you ask the right questions. And then it is able to kind of, give you the output in terms of what you want to do. So it's as simple as that.
Okay. So I mean that's interesting. So then if you look at tools like ChatGPT or Bard and some of these newer copy AI and the other things that are out there, can you then also give us some more tips and tricks on how we can leverage maximum value from these tools?
See, as a writer, okay, most of us have worked in an environment where basically we have either worked with an agency or we have been the agency and worked with a client. Okay, it's as simple as that. Now, when you're just imagine you're bringing an agency on board to work with your corporate organization. Okay, what do as a briefing? You tell them basically who you are, who your company is, what is the kind of business they are in, who are their kind of customers, um, who's the target set that you're communicating to, what are you trying to specifically achieve out of the program? And normally an agency will come back to you with a quarterly plan or a half yearly plan or whatever it is. And what is the kind of expected output? These are the kind of deliverables that I need in a certain period of time. These are the executives you'll be talking to. And that's basically what it is. So it's as simple as starting out with ChatGPT or Bard or any other tool. There are multiple tools available today. It's just that ChatGPT and Bard seem to be the most popular and top of the charts. But these are you start by basically creating context. Also remember that we are used to searching. In the previous example, I gave you the example of going on a holiday. We're used to searching and getting an answer. This is not working with the search engine. So that's the first thing you have to get out of your mind. This is not a search engine. This is an iterative process. Okay. So, for example, just to give you a thing, I use ChatGPT, by the way, fairly extensively in a lot of the content that I generate. And the talent department in my company came to me the other day and gave me a note and said, see, there are some people who are using some software which they are downloading from public domain, and that software basically is being accessed using their official ID. Now that makes it official use of the software that breaches license agreements. Okay, and that could cause us litigation, it could cause us damages, punitive action, penalty, whatever, all the rest of it. So can you basically, help us draft a note? These are the basic parameters. They gave me the context. I took that whole thing and put it into ChatGPT and said, look, can you draft a note to employees of my company? I named the company. And earlier, when I used ChatGPT, I told them who we are, who's Suntech, this is the business we are in, what we do, where we are located, etc., etc. And I pushed that whole thing out there. So it came back to me with a draft. And then I went back and said, hey, I'm not satisfied with this draft. Literally, it's like talking to a buddy. I said, hey, I'm not satisfied with this. I need to be more affirmative, much more stronger in terms of what it needs to say. So it came back and said, oh, sorry, I did a kind of a milder version, but here is a better version for you. It took me 3 iterations to get the draft that I wanted. Then I had to do a little bit of manual editing and checking a few things, and it was ready. But that entire process, right from the input to the final output, took me about 15 minutes, you know. And the other good part is clean copy, everything kind of comes out in a very kind of clean way. So when using these tools, you have to remember it's not a search engine. You put in a question, it gives you an answer. The answer that it gives you has to come in the sense of a context. The other thing is that you have to also set some rules for it. So what's the tone I want to use? It has to be a friendly tone, or it has to be this piece is going out from the CEO of the company. So it gives you create that persona in the mind of the tool, just as you would in the mind of an agency or somebody you're briefing. So it gets a context of how you want to write, and then it generates a copy out of that. So that is the key to using these tools. It's an iterative process. It's a process where you have to define things. You can't just leave it to give an answer without setting the context. Otherwise, it will give you an answer. It will give a perfectly good answer, but it will be very, very generic and not really applicable to your context or your company or your product or whatever else that you're seeking to achieve. So that becomes a very important part of using this tool. And the other thing is that I'm sure for anybody who's currently producing content, you have a certain process that you follow. Okay. In fact, when I used to run my own content agency, York Communications, we had a 6-step process to creating content. So the first part was, basically doing some fundamental research. After that, we would basically, generate ideas or the direction in which we wanted. Then we would kind of refine that. Then we would design the kind of content, if it was a white paper or an ebook or whatever it was, we would design that. Then we would actually implement and actually write that document. And then we would review and perfect it and then release it. So we had a 6-step process to that whole thing. Now, what you should do is take your basic process that you've been using all these years and apply to it areas where you can basically use a tool like ChatGPT or Bard or whatever else to maximize the output in the quickest possible time. So, for example, research. Now, if you're using earlier versions of ChatGPT, the research stops at 2021. It may not be up to 2023. So you have to be cognizant of that. You have to be mindful of that. You may just be better off using a Google search and getting some information out of there. Then, when it comes to idea generation, certainly you can take those bits of information, you can mash it around, and you can actually ask it to produce some ideas. It will do a great job of that. We've used it to actually produce personas, customer personas. So the target audience is very clearly defined. Then refining those ideas, producing headlines, putting things together. Great way of using some of this to kind of make this happen. So that is essentially how we kind of use this in a more interesting way to improve productivity and efficiency.
I think it's about. I mean, you spoke a lot about prompts and the amount of instructions you need to give it or the guidelines you need to set. And there's a term that is associated with generative AI, right? Prompt engineering. So, if you could spend maybe a minute explaining what this prompt engineering is, and is it really engineering as they would say, or is it the traditional word that engineering connotes?
See, Ruben, what it involves is rather than kind of just doing a keyword search as you would normally do in a kind of a normal context. What prompt engineering is essentially putting together the parameters in a meaningful way to get a meaningful output. Okay. So, for example, it's interesting, but you can actually contextualize this. So, the same email that I'm generating to say engage employees better. Okay. I want to engage employees better. I can actually tell them that, look, can you put this email out as if you were Shakespeare? And this will kind of turn the whole thing around, and it will give you in the 15th century period language. It will kind of tell you, or 16th century, whatever. It will tell you. It'll redraft the whole thing in that context. You want to vet some strategy, and you say, can you basically develop or build on the strategy if you were looking at it through the eyes of a Napoleon? And it will give you that context of how that whole thing. So prompt engineering is really taking the context. It could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be code development, it could be whatever, and essentially using the right syntax of questions where you leave a couple of variables in that, and essentially those variables can be filled in depending on what it is. So I could say write and leave a blank for the kind of document that I want. It could be email or white paper, ebook, whatever it is, to basically develop a strategy like, and I could leave another variable there where you can say like Barack Obama, like Napoleon, like whatever, you can give some variables there. That will enable my organization to understand something better. And then there again, you could give a variable to enable Suntech or IBM, or whatever. So it's basically crafting together the context or helping the engine to understand the context that will give it the right answer for whatever requirement you have. It's building out these set of prompts. Now, why are we saying we need to do these prompts and make them available? Is because there are different people in different roles across the organization who basically have want an easy way to get answers, and this will help them do that rather than leaving it to their own devices or their own creativity. It's as simple as that.
Okay. I see Devanshi has raised
Yeah,
her hand.
I was
Devanshi,
just noticing Devanshi.
Hi,
can
Peter.
I?
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
So basically, I had two issues which I also use ChatGPT a lot nowadays in my everyday life. So yeah, one thing I would like to add is yes, content creation, it is very helpful. Apart from that, I use it also for editing and changing the tonality and things like that, which is enhanced features. Like if you already have something which you have created, and if you just want to paraphrase it in certain way or change the tonality, it's very helpful in that also, like make it more conversational or make it more technical. So I use it a lot, but there are two issues which I face, and if you could just help me how to deal with it better. One is I see a lot of monotonous, like if I uh, it after a certain point, it's when you read it, you it's just so clear that it's chat gpt-ish. It gets very monotonous, it starts following the same pattern. Another thing, I keep giving prompts, okay, that okay, no, make it different, or make it more conversational, or make it in bullet points or whatever. I have seen that after one or two prompts, it forgets the previous instruction. So for me, what I personally see is it gets a task when I want a particular thing, and if I have to give 4 5 different kind of instructions, by the time I reach the third instruction, it's forgotten my first instruction in the same thread. So this is one issue which I face. So if you could just help me how to deal with this. And the second issue is when if I'm asking for say particular case studies or statistics, you know, to add value to it, almost every single time that statistics is not correct. They will generate statistics that okay, according to this report, this, but when I ask for the source or when I go to Google and search it, there's nothing like that. So that authenticity of statistics or case studies or real life examples is not there. So if you could just help me how to deal with these two issues.
So I was talking to an analyst. I'll take your second question first. I was talking to an analyst the other day, and I was asking him. He's a marketing analyst, and he was telling me about. We were talking about ChatGPT and all the rest of it. So he said, I was doing some research, and he said, I, I I put in all the parameters into the tool, and I asked it to give me, a report on that, and it generated the report. Then I said, can you give me the sources of information? And it gave me links to all the sources that it had basically pulled out. And then he says, I went to the links and clicked on it, and every single link was fake. It didn't exist. Those links didn't exist at all. So
Correct.
I
That's
think,
exactly what I'm facing. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think we have to realize that this is not a source for getting data. And like Bhairavi has just put up on the chat, data stops at 2021. So if you're looking at contemporary data, and all of us in marketing and communications want data which is 2023. So if you're looking at the latest data, this is not the place to basically get it. I think we have to accept that fact. The way you can use it is essentially do your research separately using Google, ask this to provide you whatever it does, and basically then you have to put the whole thing together and then ask it to create a draft using a particular tonality. It's very good, for example, for creating summaries. If you put in long information, it's great. It gives you summaries, it gives you bullet points. So let's understand this. And again, then coming to your first question, this is not the medicine for everything that we do in marketing. I mean, let's be very clear about that. This is not going to give us all the solutions 100%. It can take you probably 50% in some cases, 60% in some cases, and that again is an excellent defense to basically say why we will still keep our jobs, because this is not going to do everything for you automatically, and people have realized that. So it's not like tomorrow I can do away with a content writer and instead replace it with ChatGPT. People will not be able to survive just using that. So agreed, it will not. To me, it's a good starting point, and I leave it there. It's a good place to start. Sometimes when you have a block and you're thinking of ways in which you want to do things, and sometimes, believe me, last week or earlier this week, I wanted some very pithy kind of headlines. We are doing some advertising somewhere, and we needed some good headlines to be created. And I wanted those headlines to be generated. Believe me, after the third iteration, I said I'll do it on my own because I was just not going anywhere with it. It was not able to understand where I was going. So I think we have to accept that. But what I would say is it's a good starting point for whatever you're doing. And then sometimes you may get your objectives clear, sometimes you don't. I use it, for example, a lot for internal communications where I get a request from some department or the other within the organization saying, "We are doing this, this is the context, this is blah, blah, blah. Can you draft an email?" Oh, it does a fantastic job for me. But what I've also noticed is, for example, we were moving into a new facility in Trivandrum, and I wanted the product I mean we had repeated messages, addressing different kind of things. So one was looking at catering, looking at transport, looking at who will sit where, looking at which teams are moving where. We had about 10, 12 emails that had to go out over a period of time. And what I found is, as you progressed along that journey, the email started looking repetitive. I'm very excited to inform you. I am thrilled to tell you. It all started with the same kind of thing. So then you
Mm.
prompt it and try to make it a little better. Or worst case, okay, thank you for this draft. I will now garnish it and do it myself. I'll edit it and do it myself. That's basically the approach you need to take.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Welcome.
Yeah. So I think that was a very interesting question. Does anybody else have any questions? I'll just ask a follow-up question on this, Peter, and I think I mean, it's on everybody's mind, and we've already been discussing some bit of this right now with Bhairavi also mentioning it in the post, that the ethical concern or the data relevancy or uh, the authenticity of any information that's put out there through GPT. Uh, how, see, one is obviously it will get better, and now at the moment we are trying to clean this up and make it into a system that is going to be going to help us a lot more. So where do we start with this whole discussion on authenticity of data and information? Uh, do we have to validate everything, or is there something that we can take? Okay, this is Chat GPT has got this much right.
See, as long as we understand what the risks are, we can decide how we want to implement it. Okay. And the risks, and these are not risks that I've come up with. These are something which, again, I attended a Gartner webinar and they came up with some of these risks. The risks are, first of all, elimination of jobs. That's one risk. You may believe that certain jobs need not exist, but by doing away with them, it's not like you're solving a problem. That's one. Second thing is there is a systemic bias in the system. There are areas where there will be some things which may be leaning towards one direction or the other. You have to be smart enough to identify what that is. There could be misinformation, and we've seen that. Like I said the other day, the analyst told me he got all these links and none of them worked. They were all, just dead end links. You could actually be in a situation where IP itself is getting devalued because of using this tool on a repeated basis. Okay, or there could be malicious use from using. So as long as you understand what the risks are, I think you can work with that, work around that, and use it to the context and the benefit that you want to create out of this. Now, the other thing to remember is that every output that these tools generate, okay, the liability of what you're presenting in as a recommendation to a customer, putting it on your website, public domain, whatever, is your liability. Okay. Tomorrow, if you get into a legal situation, you cannot turn around and basically say that, look, the tool gave me this information and therefore the tool is to blame and the owner of the tool is Microsoft, so Microsoft is liable. Or the owner of the tool is Google, Google is liable. First of all, when you use this tool, to start using this tool, there is a huge disclaimer that comes up in between which you never read. None of us read that, and we just click agree and we go in and use it. And I'm sure somewhere on the 44th page there is something which says that, look, we are not liable for the content that you that is being generated over this. So the reality is you are putting it out as a brand, you are liable for whatever is going out there, and therefore that has to be, you have to go in, I mean, understand the situation with your eyes wide open. There's no kind of, compromise on that. And therefore, whatever you put out there, like what you would do if you were writing something out from scratch, you are liable, and you are the person who's, as an organization, as a brand, you are responsible for what you put out there.
Okay. So Bhumika has a question on this whole, okay, now that we have used generative AI, like for example, you use it for internal communication. Do you disclose it to your stakeholders that you've used ChatGPT, or even as a, for example, us as an agency, is it okay to tell them that, okay, we've used ChatGPT?
Absolutely. I think there's no problem in telling people that you're using ChatGPT to create something. Okay, it may not be completely used 100% to create every single document that you use. But for example, now in my organization, not only are we telling our stakeholders like corporate services or talent or IT or whatever, that we're using ChatGPT to create the content, and I tell the management, I tell my boss the same thing. But we're also saying that, look, why don't you start adopting it? And in fact, we are now actually building out prompt engineering for each of these departments to understand what their context is and how they can use it in their day-to-day life, so that life becomes easier for everybody. So I don't see a problem in telling people that this is ChatGPT generated content. However, one has to be cognizant of the fact that what we are seeing today in, say, using a ChatGPT to generate a blog, okay, that you want to put, or using it to generate, some web page content. Basically, what we are seeing is the number of hits on that content is going down. So as soon as you put that into, your website, the number of hits are going down. Now, I do not know whether this is a turf war between Microsoft and Google, because ultimately your website, comes up on a Google search. And I don't know the answers yet. I don't know whether, if I generate my content using Bard, maybe the hit rates will be better. I have to try that out, and we have to figure that out. But this is certainly the case today, that any content that's generated on a chat GPT, the hit rates are not as good as they should be if it was original content. So the search engines are still asking for original content.
Okay. Okay.
And therefore,
That's
using it
okay.
100% is not advisable. As I said, use it as a starter, use it as the base masala that you can put in. Then the dish that you prepare after that is your creativity and what you do.
Correct. So I mean, as the use of generative AI increases across different fields, how do you see the role of content creators? And I'm not talking just about writing, but also design and these other content that gets created. How do you see this role evolving of, say, a content marketer or a content creator?
See, I'll give you two or three use cases here that where we use it, and we see a lot of benefit. So one is, for example, tomorrow I have to interview a subject matter expert in the company who's talking about a particular area or domain that he wants to speak about. uh, I take that recording. It's either a recording which is done on Teams, or I get an MP4 file, put it into Otter, for example. Otter has become a little more smarter now. So Otter will give you keywords, Otter will give you structure, apart from the actual transcript. And the transcript quality is also improved, because I've seen in recent times, uh, despite our nuances on language, it's able to understand what the words are, and it gives you a better thing. Now I take that entire transcript, 1 hour transcript, and then I put it into a chat GPT. And I could, again, because Otter has given it to me broken up into chunks, I could take chunks of that, put it into a chat GPT and say, summarize this for me. Make it into 5 bullets or make it into 10 bullets. It's great to as a starting point. Then from there, I can go out and build my own original content. So that is one use case that we're using. We're using it just for generating a summary or generating the key points or the key messages that we want to deliver to the market. It's not necessarily a final output document. The other thing that I'm seeing is, and in agencies we do that very often. We go into meetings with clients. Okay, again, if you're able to record that meeting, and then you ask them to prepare the minutes of that meeting from that recording, it's a very quick summarization of what you discussed. You can virtually send it back to the client in a matter of minutes, get it accepted, and move on, in the program that you want. The third thing that we are doing is actually preparing agency briefs out of this. So the other day, for example, one of my teams in the company wanted to create an extensive training program which is going to last for 12 months, has different components. There needed to be different creative interventions along the way. There needed to be different things we had to do on our intranet. There were so many things that had to be done over a period of time. So what basically I did is we heard of this guy on the call. He gave us some key facts. I asked some questions. We got the answers to that. We took the whole thing and we asked ChatGPT to create a brief out of that. And we reviewed that brief. It came out with some very interesting ideas. For example, one of the ideas over there was ask your CEO to do a kind of a introductory video that would encourage people or motivate people to join these courses. Okay. So then I said, okay, you're asking me to do this. Now, why don't you create a script for my CEO so that he can go? And I want a 1 minute video created. Why don't you create a script for my video or for my CEO? And in a matter of seconds, it generated a script. Again, I couldn't take it as is. I had to edit it a little, do that. But what normally would have taken 3 days to kind of assimilate and contextualize and then brief the agency, I was able to do in a matter of half a day. I got the whole thing put together. I gave it to the stakeholder. He approved it. Next day, we gave it to the agency and said, now you have the basic brief. Now start creating, whatever needs to be done and give us your suggestions on top of it. And we were able to roll out the whole campaign in a matter of a week or 10 days. So that's another interesting, use case where we've applied it. In a company like ours, which builds products, okay, we have a centralized repository which contains product information. I'm actually able to pick up the product information from there, and I'm able to actually then mishmatch it, in a Word document as an example, and then I'm able to actually take that and create, for example, a draft data sheet out of that. Okay, just a draft. Then I can further validate it, vet it, examine it, do whatever I have to, and then create the next stage out of that. So I'm using it in 4 or 5 different ways, just as a conversation starter, just as a thought starter, just as a summarization of the other day we did a very interesting thing. There was an article which was written on something around telecom, and somebody else from the organization had written an article earlier about using the convergence of telecom and banking, for typically for a bank. I actually took both the articles and I put it together, and we created a third draft out of it, which actually was pretty decent.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
multiple use cases. As I said, you have to look at your context.
yeah, no. And as I listen to you and you talk to the use case through the use cases, one thing I'm realizing is that, see, you've got experience, and maybe some of us have gone through some bit of training over the last, either through journalism school or through some of our experiences. I think going back to our core of how we do something, the thought processes, the research process, the basic ideas of how to create content, or what is the basic questions one needs to ask when you create, say, for example, a well-researched blog or a well-researched. I think that is something that will always stay, right? The core skills that one needs as a content creator, and the core skills that one needs to be able to create, valuable content will always remain. I think that AI will not be able to do that. AI will not be able to bring nuances, because, as Devanshi was saying, that it is very easy. I mean, I'm able to tell what content is written by an AI chatbot and what content is probably written by a human. And I mean, I don't know about the others, but it's pretty evident, the use of flowery language, the use of certain types of icons that are there, and I mean, it's pretty evident to me that it's probably Chat GPT or some other AI tool that is there. So I
See,
feel that,
Ruben,
yeah,
as the creativity quotient increases,
yeah,
the use of the AI tool decreases.
okay,
So for the more mundane, routine tasks that you need to do, it's good to use something like this. For example, we were experimenting with a tool called VPick, okay, for design creation, AI design creation. Now, simple stuff. I have, last month we had yoga day, for example. Okay, simple stuff that came out. Uh, Basically, it's very easy for us to kind of create a nice banner which can go on a header of a mailer or something like that. Okay, very simple. But if I want to make it highly creative and all the rest of it, these tools are not so evolved yet to do that. There are marketplaces, like there's a company called Typeface, for example, which is based on the West Coast. There you can actually take elements of your campaign. So I can, if I say I'm an automobile manufacturer, I can take the photo of the car and put it on that platform, and then I can say that, can you show the car, being driven in the Alps or whatever it is, and it will bring in the images of the Alps and mesh it into that and create a nice ad for me, and then I can put in all my mandatories, my logos, whatever it is, and generate something out of it. So those are some of the things that you can do. It will speeden up your work, but it's not necessarily going to replace what you're doing.
Okay.
I think that's the key core message that we want to kind of deliver today.
Okay. Okay. By the way, you see that you've typed something. You can maybe unmute yourself and talk us through that point.
Yes, thank you. So what I was saying was, so it does happen when you go on ChatGPT and when you type your commands through the conversation. At some point, it forgets what you've mentioned earlier. So to avoid that, you could number the prompt, saying, prompt one, generate a brief; prompt two, summarize it; prompt three. So you can number your briefs and refer to them to make the tool remember what you've said earlier.
Oh, that's a good
Okay.
point. I never thought of that. Okay, that's interesting. That's something. Okay.
Also, Peter, I have one question for you.
Huh.
So I think you'd agree that one of the challenges in our industry is finding skilled talent, especially skilled writers, right? So how do you think AI addresses that or changes that?
See, again, as I said, as you have a requirement for more sophisticated content, okay, and if you assume that writing a blog is at the lowest end of the chain, and that to an SEO kind of a blog, the lowest end of a chain, then you have a point of view, then you have something which is a more creative blog, then you come to an article, then you come to a case study, then you come to a white paper, then you come to a research paper, and then you come to an ebook and beyond. If you look at that entire chain, Chat GPT and other tools will address only some part of it. They will not address the whole part of it. But at the more sophisticated end of the spectrum, it can address your basic requirement of essentially putting together a structure, for example. Okay. See, one of the things I experimented, okay, by the way, when I was preparing for this presentation, is I asked ChatGPT, I said, give me a structure for a presentation. I've got the topic. This is a topic. Now tell me how I should basically structure it. So it fatafat, then slide one, slide two, it gave me one whole thing right down. Then I said, look, this doesn't help me at all. These points even I know. Now can you populate these points for me? So then it went and gave me one structure where it actually pulled out some definitions and what is AI, what is AI being used for content. It gave me all kinds of definitions. Then I said, look, man, this audience I'm going to be talking to is a young audience. So if I put all this, start sounding like Einstein and putting all this theoretical stuff together, it's not going to help them. So then it came back and gave me a more kind of a lighter reference and some quotes and all that. I was not really satisfied with that. But what it did is it was a thought starter for me. It was a thought prompter for me in terms of this is the way you could possibly address it. And that was about where it ended. That's why I didn't even create a presentation out of it, but it just gave me some basic idea of what I should cover. Use it to that extent, and then the rest is yours. So I understand it is difficult to kind of find it as a complete replacement to writers, but at least it can give you some basic kind of a skill. And if you remember, you worked in York, I know, and if you remember, our whole thing was it's like constructing a building. Content is like constructing a building. You start first by doing the blueprint, the architect's plan. That plan, once it is accepted by the client and everybody thinks it's a good plan to go with, then you actually get the construction workers to come and they just execute according to plan. The contractor executes according to plan. Maybe some elements of the architect's blueprint can be done using a chat GPT. So that foundational kind of stuff can be done easily. And some elements of the garnishing at the end, the title, few things like that can be done again by these tools, but not the entire process.
But do you see any risk of, subpar or sub-quality work being delivered in large numbers by agencies that you might,
Yes,
get into? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I see that, and therefore one is still to be very vigilant in terms of how one is able to kind of see. As I said, if you when I was talking of those use cases, a lot of those use cases were back-end use cases. They were used to summarize. They were used to prepare minutes. They were used to prepare a brief. They were used to do those kind of things. Where also a lot of time gets taken. So those tasks you can do very easily using a tool like this, but not a front end task. I would still not, for example, ask it to create a web page for me.
Right. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks. We have a couple more minutes, so if there are any other questions. Yeah, Aditya, go ahead. You can unmute now.
Hello, am I audible?
Yep.
Yes, you.
Yeah. Hi, Peter. So I just had a question regarding the majority tools that we see regarding AI. They are expanding massively. Like at this point, especially in our field, we can make anything from presentations to creating copies to creating blogs, everything. What do you feel about the complete dependency on AI for these kinds of tasks?
Yeah, so that's what I was just talking about, that when I was talking to Bhairavi on that. It's not a complete dependency. I don't think we can use it end to end yet. We can use it as a thought starter. We can use it to maybe get some alternatives to basically complete stuff. We can use it to quickly structure something out. We can use it in non-risk areas. For example, to me, internal communications is a very non-risk area for some of the very routine stuff that goes out. So templatizing things over there, creating, standard drafts over there, all that can be used. And we can use it to, like I said, get some ideas. For example, the other day, our international PR agency out of New York, they came up with a set of questions on a particular topic. Okay. It was about, I think, closure of bank branches or something. What is the impact of what? We just took so just as a starter, we put the questions into ChatGPT and said, "Can you give us answers to this?" And it gave us some very good qualitative material, okay, but not quantitative data to substantiate any of this, because again, the data that it uses is all outdated. So we actually took the qualitative material, we looked at it, we kind of then did our own thinking. We spoke to somebody internally who was an expert in the company, and then we came up with a decent thing. Now, if I had to start from scratch and create all this information, possibly it would have taken me 2 days to do. Okay, with all the other interruptions I have at work, this whole thing I was able to do in about half a day. So that is where I see the efficiency at this point, but not end-to-end use of the space data. I'm very clear about that, at least as far as I'm concerned in what we do.
Yeah, I think Manish, you also have something. Why don't you unmute and talk us through what you just put up in the chat?
Yeah, sure. So, is anyone in the room ever used the paid version of ChatGPT?
I use a paid version.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
use
we also use a
So,
paid
I
version.
think I can cite to Devanshi's problem about, the first problem was about forgetting the initial instructions, which is already covered by Bhairavi. And the second, where Devanshi is not able to get the correct sources for her information, I think that can be solved by, using plugins like Browse with Bing, or you can use Scholarly.ai kind of plugins to, get over these kind of problems. So I just thought that if people here who don't know about this add-ons with, that comes with the paid version, they can explore it further.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a very valid point. And there's another guy called Zain Khan. I think he
Yes.
writes extensively on LinkedIn and other places. So I follow him, and he has a newsletter that he produces on AI on a routine basis. He's got some good tips, that one could kind of use as well.
All right. So this is my screen visible? Sorry, I didn't ask before sharing it, but
Yeah,
it's
we can see.
like a small walkthrough that I can give here. Now, talking about extensions, there are kind of templates. We don't need to exactly understand what how prompt engineering works, but I think we can easily leverage these templates that we have now. It's a very basic extension that you can install. It's called AI-PRM. So this extension can help you, have this had various options to choose from, like depending upon the task that you are looking at. So you can make use of this. It's a great tool that is an add-on. So this is something that I wanted to introduce, just in case if someone doesn't know about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, very
And
helpful, Manish. I think what you can do is we're running out of time. So if you can share it in the chat, I think that will be
sure,
useful.
sure,
Yeah, I think this is certainly valuable.
Yeah, and
sure.
actually, that's what we wanted to end our session with, and I think Manish, you've done a great job in taking us there. So, Peter, any other tips and tricks or any other tools that you feel you've used extensively, and apart from ChatGPT and Bard, obviously?
I've been experimenting with another tool called Tome.
Okay.
So that's something else that I've been doing, which also helps create presentations, and it's got a graphical side to it. But again, it's all very early stages and not very satisfied with the final output that one gets. We use a tool called VPick to do some banner designs and all more for internal communication. But it's an ocean out there, and like Manish also rightly pointed out, it's a combination of things that will actually get you your solution. It's not necessarily we use copy AI, for example, for some of the stuff that we do. But again, it's and sometimes you have to use 2 or 3 different tools sequentially to get the final output and the answer that you want. You've got to certainly do a plagiarism check. You've got to do all those things, because otherwise you can't be assured of the final copy that comes out.
Okay. That's great. I mean, Manish, I think, has not yet put it up. So I think what we'll do, maybe in our newsletter, we will do an article or a section where we focus on generative AI tools and give our recommendation for what the tools can be used. So with that, I think that brings us to the end of our session. So thank you so much, Peter. I think it was a very, very informative session. I think brought give us a reality check on what generative AI is and how we as content creators need to wake up to the reality that it is not the future, it is the now. It's what we are living with, and we need to accept it and start uh, figuring out ways to leverage it in our existing work and current working process. So thank you once again, and everyone, thank you for being a great audience. So we will be back next month with another session on generative AI. In that session, we will talk about the creative aspects of generative AI, and not just. So we're getting an agency owner who has, and a couple of agency owners who have used generative AI, and what are their views on how it could possibly change that landscape. And I think, Bhairavi, you were talking about how this client and agency sort of use of AI is going to change content creation. So we'll be discussing that in our next session. Thanks so much, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for being a
Thank
great
you.
audience.
Yep.
That's the end of our session.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.